Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the Benji-Sales live chat. It's so good to be back. It's so good to see everybody. How are you doing today? What is up, live chat crew? One sec, I'm retweeting that I'm live. Sorry it took a few minutes for me to get on here. Apologies. Alright, we're about to get rocking and rolling, though. Sorry. Okay. All right, hopefully everything's up and running good. How is it going, everyone? Great to see you. What is up, live chat crew? We've actually got some good topics to talk about today. The last few weeks, we had talked about how there was basically nothing to talk about because we were coming out of the post-holiday season, right? Christmas, New Year's. The last two chats, we were kind of just scraping for stuff to talk about. They ended up being good chats because you guys always ask good stuff, but we just did not have many big, huge, crazy, interesting topics to talk about. This is going to be an Xbox-heavy week, but we finally are starting to get the news rolling into the new year. We're finally going to start to see 2024 taking shape and see what's rocking and rolling in the video game industry. So obviously the two big things to highlight off the top, probably the news stories that are going to have the most discussion today. And of course, as always, I've got polls ready and rocking to go for them. First of all, probably the first thing that blew up that was kind of shocking, surprising, and caused all sorts of controversy was some reports about some Xbox first-party titles possibly going multi-platform. Now, this all started when Nate the Hate had mentioned on, I believe, his own podcast that there was an Xbox title that was, possibly coming to other platforms. He didn't name it, but he said that there was an Xbox game that is looking to go multi-platform potentially. That got followed up by some rumblings and rumors on, I believe, Reset Era is where it first broke that one of these games is possibly Hi-Fi Rush. And that was starting to be rumored that it was going to come to Nintendo Switch. Then all of a sudden there was reports that it's also going to possibly be coming to PlayStation 5. And then shortly after that, besides Hi-Fi Rush, I think it might have even been the next day, Jeff Grubb came out on the Bombcast, I think. And he had said that he heard that Sea of Thieves was potentially going multi-platform. He had mentioned Switch and PlayStation 5 for Sea of Thieves. That reporting was then followed up by Stephen Totillo, who confirmed he also had heard that Sea of Thieves is potentially going multi-platform. Now, Stephen Totillo had said he had only heard about Sea of Thieves possibly going to PlayStation 5. He did not hear about Nintendo Switch. Doesn't mean it couldn't possibly come to Switch. It's just Totillo heard PS5, and Totillo also reported that that could be as soon as early 2024, so basically in the next couple months. Now, both Grubb and Stephen Totillo were not able to outright confirm that this is indeed going through. Just both of them had heard that it was being explored. I would say two sources like that, very strong ones, Stephen Totillo and Jeff Grubb both corroborating it. That to me says it's absolutely true that they at least explored this. The question is going to be, did they go past exploration phase and go to actual, okay, let's ship this, we're going to do it phase? So that caused all sorts of controversy. Is Xbox really going to do this? Is it the smart move? Is it the right move? Is it going to just be Hi-Fi Rush? Is it just going to be Sea of Thieves? Is it going to be both of them? Are they PS5? Are they Switch? Just tons and tons and tons and tons of discussion. We're going to go into all of it because I'm sure that you guys have tons of thoughts about it. The second big news topic that we're going to discuss today, obviously, is Xbox. Xbox finally got the ball rolling on some announcements, some news. In an official capacity, they announced the Xbox Developer Direct 2024. The games that are going to be highlighted here, Senua's Saga Hellblade 2, Avowed is going to get a deep dive. That strategy game Ara, and then the surprise here was Indiana Jones, and now we have reporting coming out that Indiana Jones is launching this year. That is to me a big surprise, simply because we've never seen Indiana Jones, besides that really brief teaser that they did a while back, but we've never actually seen the game itself. So I was just assuming that Indiana Jones was going to be a 2025 launch. No, all of the rumblings now reporting from Insider Gaming and other sources are that Indiana Jones is actually targeting to launch this year in 2024. If that is true, wow, Xbox has quite the lineup for this year. You got to give them credit. We'll have to see if the actual quality comes through on all of these, but Yeah, I mean, it's a very good lineup, right? That would be 5 big exclusive games coming this year, right? You would have Avowed, you would have Hellblade 2, you would have Indiana Jones, you'd have Towerborn, and you'd have Flight Simulator 2024. That's a nice roadmap for a single year. So we'll have to see. Again, quality has to actually hit. It can't just be game releases if the quality's not there, but it's looking good. It is looking good. So we can talk about that if you guys want to, and anything else. Obviously, like I said, a bit of a Xbox heavy news week. There's rumblings that there's a state of play soon. I'm sure Switch is gonna and Nintendo's gonna have probably a February Direct. So there's gonna be other stuff coming, but this is a pretty Xbox heavy news. So for anyone, if this is your first time as part of my live chat, the way it works, it's a stream, it's a show, it's 100% driven by you, your comments, your questions. You just drop them down into chat, and we talk about the latest news in the video game industry. There's going to be a few ways to do that. First of all, of course, there is the free method. You type a question, whatever you want, it pops into chat, and I get to as many free questions as I possibly can. If you want to guarantee that I get to your question, there's going to be 2 ways to do that. First of all, there is the super chat method. You type a donation, whatever you want, pops into chat, and I get to super chats as soon as they drop. The other way to guarantee that you get some comments or question highlighted is going to be by becoming a channel member. Channel memberships are $4.99 a month, and basically the perk for you is it gives you priority in chat. I guarantee all channel members at least 1 comment or question highlighted per stream. Oftentimes it's much more than 1, but it basically just gives you that priority in the chat, because essentially every week I never have time to hit all of the free questions because you guys fill it up with too much good stuff. All right, everyone, and as always, don't feel pressured or obligated to donate or join channel memberships. Just a way to help support me and the channel. All right, let's get rocking, dudes. I think that is enough off the top for me. I know we've been trying to target going to Fridays, but I wasn't 100% sure if I was going to be able to do a live chat tomorrow, whereas today I was like locked and loaded, ready to go. So I was like, you know what? We had some big news topics this week. I don't want to risk possibly, not being able to stream tomorrow, so let's just do it today. And right off the top, before we get into your comments and questions, shout out to Highlander. Highlander just gifted 5 memberships. Those went out to Adam99263, Khalil Jama, Ghostface Killa, Wally MC, Jacob Novik. You guys all just got channel memberships, which means you guys all get priority in the chat for the next month, courtesy of Highlander. So if you guys have any comments or questions or anything that you want to discuss about the video game industry, drop it into chat, because you guys are channel members. Thanks to the generosity of Highlander, and that's going to last you a full month, right? So the next 4 chats, thanks to Highlander. Highlander, you are the man. Thank you for giving back to the community like that. And yeah, if you guys are in chat, drop something, because you're going to get priority. All right. Let's get rock and rolling. We got some super chats first, kicking us off the bat. Plastic Hearts Podcast with a 5 super chat. Great to see you, Plastic Hearts. I'm so glad to see you back in the rotation again. Benji Boy, lots of drama with Sea of Thieves / Hi-Fi possibly going to Switch. Shouldn't Xbox try and sell as much software as possible? Okay, I have 2 polls that I'm going to do back to back on this particular news topic. So these polls are going to go pretty quick, right? I'm going to make them last maybe like 5 minutes or something. So vote in it as quick as you can, because I want to do them back to back. So the first part of the question is going to be, will Sea of Thieves or Hi-Fi Rush go multi-platform? Okay, so first is going to be will. Just a simple, is it going to happen? Doesn't have to be both of them, just one of them. Doesn't even have to be both of them to both, just in any way, shape, or form outside of PC and Xbox. Is Sea of Thieves and Hi-Fi Rush going to go multi-platform? Simple yes or no. Drop in the poll. Okay. First poll's in chat. And like I said, vote on that one quick, because probably in 5 minutes I'm going to drop the next one. Because you'll see why. They make sense to go back to back. So, yeah, this is an interesting news topic, right? Super, super interesting. Whenever I saw this first pop, I was a bit of 2 minds about it. So, here's the thing. And there's a big difference between Sea of Thieves and Hi-Fi Rush. Sea of Thieves going multi-platform is a much bigger deal. Now, in the hardcore community, the people that are constantly on forums, the people that are, you know, like the really outspoken people on Twitter and stuff, they're going to probably paint Hi-Fi Rush as like the big deal out of these two, simply because, you know, it's super beloved, got super high reviews, that sort of thing. But make no mistake, Sea of Thieves going multi-platform would be an order of magnitude bigger deal than Hi-Fi Rush. Sea of Thieves is one of the most popular games in the entire history of Xbox as a platform. You're talking about Sea of Thieves does more players than Gears of War now, right? Gears 4 and Gears 5 did not do the type of player numbers that Sea of Thieves has done. So Sea of Thieves going multi-platform would essentially be Xbox putting one of their biggest titles they've ever released in the entire history of Xbox on other platforms. So that one was super interesting to me. Whenever I first saw Hi-Fi, I was like, this is interesting. Pretty fairly small title. Developed by a Japanese studio, the sort of thing I could see having a lot of popularity on Switch, Switch specifically. PlayStation 5, I think it could find an audience too, but I think Hi-Fi would do really well on Switch. And so I was like, yeah, I can kind of see this. I don't know if I love the idea, but I can kind of see it working. Sea of Thieves, though, whenever that got rumored, I was like, okay, now we're starting to talk about like a different level of game potentially going multi-platform. And one thing I want to make very clear, I saw a lot of people being like, whenever I was talking about how big Sea of Thieves is, right? I saw a lot of people being like, oh, you know, look at those Steam player counts. It's not doing the sort of players it used to be doing. That's really just because of migration of Game Pass. It's not really anything to do with no one's playing Sea of Thieves. And if you pull up the most popular list on Game Pass right now on console, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. It's number 9. So Sea of Thieves is in the top 10 still most popular games on Game Pass on console. Still top 10. Think about how long ago that game came out, and we're talking it's a top 10 game right now on Game Pass, most popular on console. And guess what it is on PC? Right? People want to point at Steam charts. 1, 2, 3, 4. Number 5. Right, it's top 5. So you're talking about a game that's top 10 on Game Pass on console, a game that's top 5 on PC on most popular. You're talking about one of the most popular games Xbox has ever made. So this was a super interesting wrinkle. To me, Sea of Thieves is far more interesting than Hi-Fi Rush going multi-platform. Now, the key question here is should, right? Should they do that? Should they be releasing these games outside of the Xbox and PC ecosystem? Should those games go to PlayStation, and should they go to Switch? Well, I think it's a very interesting question and an interesting discussion, and something I actually made a Twitter thread about. And to me, the question about all of this is, what is Microsoft's long-term goals with Microsoft Gaming? And I use that word because Phil Spencer is no longer considered CEO of Xbox or whatever. His title is actually Microsoft Gaming. So the question you have to ask yourself is the goal of Microsoft Gaming specifically to sell the maximum number of Xbox consoles, or is it to get the maximum amount of revenue and profitability that they can? Because like I mentioned on Twitter in my thread about it, I think there's no free lunch in this scenario, right? I don't believe if Microsoft starts to pursue, and we'll have to see, right? This is all rumored. None of this is confirmed. So potentially none of these games are going multi-platform. But if, right, we're going to look at this as if the reporting is true. I think it depends, right? Is this a one-off? Is this a two-off, right? Is it just Hi-Fi and Sea of Thieves, and then we don't see any of these other, non-Activision type games go multi-platform in the next 6 years, right? We'll have to see. But let's say theoretically Microsoft starts semi-regularly, and I'm not going to say every game, but semi-regularly releasing games outside of Xbox. I do believe it will impact Xbox hardware. Absolutely, yes. Yes, in fact, I think you're already seeing that, right? We had this discussion a few weeks ago, and I had said that I believe PC's cannibalizing Xbox consoles more than I anticipated, right? I was one of those people that thought, hey, PC, console, pretty different markets, right? I don't know how much Microsoft releasing their games day one on PC will really cannibalize Xbox, and I've walked that back. I've said I think I was wrong on that. I think PC is actually cannibalizing Xbox more than I expected. If you continue to pursue that path and you're going to start releasing on even more platforms, logically speaking, yes, that will impact your hardware. But the flip side is Microsoft might see the gamble as, hey, if we lose some Xboxes, they're still going to sell some Xboxes, and they're still going to have some exclusives. It wouldn't be a scenario where all of a sudden they sell 0. But if they take a reduction in Xbox console sales, but they believe they can make that up by more people playing their games on more places and driving higher revenue and higher profit margins, it may be a gamble that they're willing to take. And let's go straight into the second poll. I told you these polls were going to be fast, the first two. So I asked you first, will Sea of Thieves or Hi-Fi Rush go multi-platform? You guys seem to very much believe the reporting from Jeff Grubb and Steven Totillo. 83% of you say yes, only 17% of you say no. I totally get why it's such a heavy vote, because that's two very like real sources, right? It's not like random Jbrony Forum 24. It's like it'd be one thing if it was just Grubb, but to me, once I saw Steven Totillo also report this, I was like, oh, okay, this is probably real. So that was the first poll. Simple, will Sea of Thieves or Hi-Fi Rush go multi-platform? You guys think they definitely will, or at least one of them. Let's ask poll number 2. Poll number 2 is going to be, should Sea of Thieves or Hi-Fi Rush go multi-platform? Big difference. Big difference between will it and should it. Right? Second poll is in the chat. All right, so my thoughts basically, like we've been talking about, I think it all comes down to what Microsoft's goals are, right? And I think it will impact their hardware sales if this isn't a one-off, right? I saw some people like Matt Piscatella, which I really like Matt, right? But I saw some people like Matt Piscatella whenever it was first rumored about Hi-Fi, and he was on Twitter kind of trying to paint it like not a big deal because not a ton of people are playing Hi-Fi, right? He, like, for his example, used how many people were playing Hi-Fi Rush last month. I think the thing that Matt would be kind of missing there in that analysis would be it's not about an individual game and it's not about just Hi-Fi. The question is if that is part of a larger trend, right? That, I think, was the thing that was a bit missing in Matt's analysis. So I would agree, right? If it was just Hi-Fi Rush and we saw like nothing else released in the next 6 years for Switch or PS5, I would be completely on board with that. I'd be like, yeah, Hi-Fi by itself going multi-platform is not going to suddenly make somebody who's thinking about buying an Xbox and not buy an Xbox. Like, that's just not going to happen, right? Too small of a game. The question is that a trend, right? And then right afterwards, you see the Sea of Thieves rumor. And now you're like, okay, now we're talking about 2 games and one of them a very big game, right? And if there's going to be even more than that, if there's going to be 3, 4, 5 games over the next couple years, yeah, at some point you hit a turning point where it's probably going to have some hardware impact. Again, not saying it'll drive Xbox hardware down to 0, but do I believe if you just start semi-regularly releasing your exclusive games on other platforms, it'll have some cannibalization effect? Sure, especially after what we saw with PC. So, yeah, it's going to be pretty interesting to see how this shakes out. I think it all comes down to the gamble of what Microsoft's goals are. And the things they've communicated to me kind of sounds like console's not the focus. My dog's going crazy. Give me 5 seconds. I'm going to let him outside. It's warm here, and I don't want to deal with him doing this nonstop. So I'll be right back. It's going to be 2 seconds, and I'll be right back. All right, I'm back. I told you it would be fast. So yeah, that's kind of my brief thoughts on it. It really just depends. It really just depends. And of the two, I think Sea of Thieves is the much bigger deal than Hi-Fi is for that. So let's keep going. I'm sure there's going to be more dimensions to this. We're already like 20 minutes into the chat, and I've only answered one question, so I got to get rolling. But thank you so much for that super chat there, Plastic Hearts. Timmer with an incredibly generous 20 super chat. That's insanely generous, Timmer. You did not ever have to do that. Thank you so much, Timmer. The Kirby brand sold 150 million to 200 million worth of merchandise in 2002 alone. Are you surprised Nintendo doesn't treat Kirby as one of its main brands like Zelda, Mario, and Pokemon? Plus, you are the man, Benji. You are also the man, Timmer. Always pulling up super interesting stuff like that statistic right there, by the way. I'm not super shocked that they don't treat Kirby as like this massive, massive IP, simply because Kirby traditionally doesn't sell anywhere near, in terms of games, anywhere near like Zelda, Mario, Pokemon, anything like that. But we did see Kirby and the Forgotten Land do very, very, very well. What was the last sales milestone for that? Did really, really well. So I would say potentially we're about to see Kirby get a lot more attention from Nintendo. What was the last shipped number? I know they just did one last earnings, but I can't remember exactly where it was at. Wow, it's at almost 7 million copies. Right? Am I seeing that right? Yeah, nearly 7 million. Dude, nearly 7 million for a Kirby game as of last reporting. I mean, that's a game I won't be shocked. It's legged pretty well. I won't be shocked if that's a game that eventually ships 10 million units, right? Long term. Wouldn't shock me at all, especially if it gets some sort of like, support on Switch 2, or Switch 2 is fully backwards compatible. We've seen evergreen Nintendo games just have crazy legs. So the idea of Forgotten Land eventually hitting 10 billion, considering it's already basically at 7 as of it'll be at over 7 million the next time they report. Pretty insane for a Kirby game. So if we see that sort of performance long term, I mean, maybe you're going to see Nintendo put a lot more attention on Kirby. I would expect definitely they're going to do a sequel to Forgotten Land where it's like, that 3D style. We saw a giant sales boost from Kirby. So historically, I'm not surprised it doesn't get the, sort of attention that some of these other flagship Nintendo games get. But if it keeps selling, around 10 million units lifetime, yeah, you'll see Nintendo definitely give Kirby a lot more love. Even if like the merchandise stuff does well, because it does. I work for a big retailer and even we sell a bunch of Kirby stuff. It's weird. Kirby's almost been more popular in some ways with merch than he is, I feel like, with games, because he's so recognizable and a lot of people just think Kirby looks cute. So Kirby merch popular, games traditionally. It's not like Kirby never sold, but it wasn't like this huge franchise necessarily. But Forgotten Lands has done tremendous. So, like I said, you might see Kirby getting even more love from Nintendo moving forward if it keeps selling like that. Plastic Hearts Podcast dropping a 2 super chat. Thank you, Plastic Hearts. That's your second one. Game Shark might have leaked Switch 2 date September 2024. I did see this. Splitend actually pointed this out to me in the small Discord I've got. I don't know if we have any reason. Do we have any reason to believe this? Would they know? That's my question. My question simply is, would they know? Okay, but maybe they've got dev kits. Oh, they're just guessing. Okay, now I'm seeing Jason Schreier reporting that they're guessing. Yeah, I don't think Game Shark would actually know, to be honest. Now, I could be completely wrong on that, but my assumption is that Game Shark would not know when the Switch 2 is going to launch. I don't even know that, someone as big as Capcom knows the exact month that Switch 2 is going to launch. I'm going to be honest with you. Potentially no one knows outside of Nintendo, because here's the thing, Nintendo might not even know. We're talking about a console that if we're assuming it's targeting, September, October, November, December, that's probably still in flux by a little bit and, could change, right? Now, the year isn't going to change. If it's really going to launch this year, then I'm sure that Nintendo is telling partners, hey, we're going to launch sometime late this fall. Have your games ready, for the fall period. But I don't know that Nintendo themselves would have even told their most beloved partners like Capcom or Konami the exact launch month at this point. Like I said, I'm sure they've told them launch window at this point because they want the third parties to have their games ready. But it's probably more of a nebulous, be ready late fall type period for our launch. And of course, they'll get an exact date soon, but they probably don't even know an exact date. They're the most trusted partners. So I don't think Game Shark would know. Could be wrong, but it'll be interesting. But September's a good guess. I think most of us assume it's going to be September, October, somewhere in there. But thank you for that super chat, Plastic Hearts. And it'll be interesting. Maybe it was a real leak, but who knows? Benji with a 5 super chat. Thank you so much, Benji. Hi, Benji. Do you think the Xbox rumors regarding first-party games going on Switch and or PS5 is just a one-off, Ori and GoldenEye, or a new strategy? Again, Sea of Thieves is a whole different deal than every game they've ever released on this Switch stuff. So the question to me is if Sea of Thieves is real. Way more than Hi-Fi. Hi-Fi is much more like an Ori, a GoldenEye, a similar type thing as that. The question to me is specifically is Sea of Thieves. If you do truly see Sea of Thieves hit PlayStation 5 and Switch, it's not a one-off, it's a new strategy because it's too big of a game. So, again, like I just mentioned, you're talking about a game that's still top 10 on Game Pass on console and top 5 on Game Pass on PC. So, I mean, yeah, like if they do that, it's not a one-off. You wouldn't put such a large game, unless it like bombs, right? Unless they put Sea of Thieves. Here's what I would say. If Sea of Thieves rumor is real and Sea of Thieves really goes on PS5 and or Switch and it just bombs there, like no one plays it, then yeah, maybe that would scare them away from doing more games like of that scale on those other consoles because they'd say, hey, this could potentially hurt our image and we're not getting a lot of return on it. So that situation, yes. But if they launch Sea of Thieves and it does gangbusters on PlayStation 5, gangbusters on Switch, they're making tons of money off of it, they would do more because I don't think you would risk the image of such a big game like that and not plan on doing potentially others. So to me, the question is, A, is Sea of Thieves even real? We need to see if this, again, this has not been confirmed anywhere, even by Grubb and Totillo. The only thing we know basically for sure is the idea was explored, but we have no idea at all if this is going to actually ship. There's a big difference between we've explored it and we're going to ship it. So that to me is the question. Hi-Fi Rush, you could describe the exact same as Ori and GoldenEye. Pretty small, fairly niche game, that maybe can find some success, but isn't going to be like this giant ordeal. Sea of Thieves is a totally different sort of thing. Totally different. Talking about a game with more than 30 million lifetime players. All right. Highlander renewed Highlander's channel membership for 9 months. Thank you so much, Highlander. And you said, I've seen the stories about Sea of Thieves and Hi-Fi, but now some are saying Starfield, Redfall, and other Xbox games at PS5 and Switch. I do not see big games going. My guess, and again, this is a total guess, because I'll just tell you straight up, I have no insider information on any of this stuff. My guess would be if this is a strategy, at first they would probably avoid the big single-player games, and they would probably be doing service titles. That would be, again, my guess. Because if you look at the big game, where I said Hi-Fi fits more of like that Ori type thing, whereas, Sea of Thieves does not. But if you notice, Sea of Thieves is a live service game, and what do we talk about here all the time in terms of live service? You want live service games in as many places as possible, right? Because that's how you get the money out of these things. They're very expensive to upkeep. That's, again, something people forget about all the time in the cost analysis between a single-player game and a games as a service game. Single-player games are super expensive, but you also have much less, post-launch money that is going into developing that game, right? Not to say there's none, especially if you're going to do DLC, especially if you're going to do expansion packs and things like that. And of course, you're going to be paying people to, patch the game after launch. So it's not like, oh, you launch a single player game and it goes down to zero budget. No, there's going to be some, and of course, depending on post-launch, but it's not near the same as a live game as a service, right? Because then there might be some exceptions. Usually you're keeping essentially an entire studio on a game for 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 years, depending on the game, right? Like the majority of Rare has just been making Sea of Thieves for years. It's not like there's not people on Everwild, but there's way more people for the past 6 years that have been on Sea of Thieves. So you want as many people playing these games as possible. My guess, again, this is simply assuming Sea of Thieves goes multi-platform, that their focus on the big games that go multi-plat would be the service titles, and they would keep the more single-player focused stuff exclusive. But we'll have to see. I think a lot depends on what happens here. And I know that's like a pretty, bailed out answer, but I don't think we'll truly know until we see if these games really launch and how they perform. But do I think Starfield is like right now on its way to PlayStation 5? No, I don't. Could be wrong on that, but I doubt it. I doubt that. And then a super chat from Highlander, and then I can get going into your channel member questions. Highlander with a 5 super chat. Hope you're doing well. Going forward, Microsoft must be clear in their messaging where these will be played. Going to other systems will hurt Xbox. I think that's going to be very, very key if they really do this. They need to make it crystal clear what the strategy is moving forward and not nebulous, right? Because here's the thing. A lot of people say, well, this lines up exactly with what Microsoft's been telling you for years. And in a lot of ways it does, but you also have some mixed messaging from, and I respect Phil a lot, but you have some stuff that can be read as fairly mixed messaging from Phil, right? I think it needs to be made very, very clear if they come out and announce this, and it really is a 1-2 kick of Hi-Fi and Sea of Thieves. They need to be a little bit more clear than just, it's a gamble, because this will come up every single time a game launches. Every single game. It literally will. From now on, every Xbox game that launches, it'll just be nonstop debate underneath Phil, underneath Sarah Bond's comments, on forums, everywhere. It will just literally constantly be, so when is it coming to PlayStation? When's it coming? They need to have some sort of, and I'm not, again, laying out an exact roadmap for every game about when it will go multi-platform or not, or potentially never, is going to be complicated. But they do need to have something a little bit more concrete than just, we'll see. Like, you need a little bit better messaging than that. So we'll see. Highlander, I do agree that if this really happens, Microsoft need to be pretty clear about why, when, how, that sort of thing. And again, they won't be able to give you a definitive answer on every single game, but something a little bit more than just we're winging it and seeing what happens. I do think you need a little bit better messaging than that. All right, and let's go to channel member questions, because super chats are cleared. Thank you for all the super chats, everybody. Joseki here, first channel member with a question. What is up, Joseki? Hello, Benji. What is up? Last year, I asked you about Xbox potentially porting titles to other platforms, and now that their revenue is overwhelmingly from software/subs, well, I guess I was right. And with the rumors of next-gen Xbox being hybrid computing, I would not be shocked if my prediction of them also deciding to not follow PS in the hardware race may be possible. Patting myself on the back here. Joseki, you were actually, I remember you asking me that, and you were actually very, very on the money about potentially Xbox pursuing, heavier multi-platform focus. Again, I'm just being careful on going all in on this because we still have not seen Hi-Fi and Sea of Thieves launch. Until those games actually release, I want to be a little careful about being so much like, wow, we need to really assume like Microsoft's doing a bunch of multi-platform. Obviously Activision's going to be, but you know what I'm talking about. These first party, the games that we think of as Microsoft, right? Like Sea of Thieves, they've owned Rare forever, right? We're talking about the Rares, the Turn 10s, the 343s, right? That sort of thing has not really gone multi-platform traditionally. But you are absolutely correct. I mean, if you look at Microsoft's earnings and their revenue, they're hitting record levels of revenue right now, and that's not really coming from hardware, right? It's coming from the service stuff, the service elements. So it's interesting. It's very interesting, Joseki. But I remember you asking me that, and it looks like if these games start launching, you could have very much been ahead of the curve on that one. Hamishly Ford, hello Benji, hope you're doing great. I realized I did not say Happy New Year to you in the last live chat, so Happy New Year Benji, Happy New Year to you Hamish. And to everyone in the chat, may 2024 be the year of peace. I hope so. Listen, my 2024 is starting a lot better than my 2023 went. So let's see. But yes, I hope for all of you, I don't know, I'm sure some of you had an amazing 2023, but I know I've seen a lot of people say their 2023 sucked, mine included. Hopefully this 2024 is way better for all of us, right? And Happy New Year to you, Hamish. It's great to see you, buddy. JCat's in the chat. What is up, JCat? Great to see you, JCat. Thanks for helping mod the channel and being awesome. MD, Benji, any tips for overcoming social anxiety? Great question, because I'm somebody that has had crazy anxiety for large portions of my life. Now, I will say for me, the social element has been traditionally not as powerful of an anxiety for me, but I mean, listen, there's a lot of anxiety, a lot of overlap between different forms of anxiety. My anxiety traditionally has been more focused on like health type stuff, right? I'm a bit of a hypochondriac, for example. I'm just constantly, constantly think there's something wrong with me. But, So here's what I could say about anxiety in general. Again, I don't have as strong specifically of a social anxiety. Not that I have none. I think everybody has some, depending on the thing, depending on like the situation. But again, dealing with anxiety is going to have some overlap. Here's the things that have helped me in my long battles with anxiety, which have been off and on. One of the things that's really important to focus on, MD, is what you can control and what you can't. Because what is the main source of anxiety, right? Anxiety is essentially another word for fear, right? Now, they're different. There are some subtle differences between them, but there's an overlap with just straight up fear. And a lot of times our anxieties come from things that are somewhat out of our control. And eventually, you just have to come to terms with, well, what can I control and what can I not control, right? Like me with my, health type anxiety. Well, what are the things I can control? What I eat, how I exercise, things like that. But can I just control 100% if my body gets, X and X and X wrong with it? No. So all I can focus on are the things that can put me in the best position possible, and what happens, happens. Social anxiety, I would say, it's a very similar thing. One thing I had to accept a long time ago whenever I came on social media. At first, I used to get really triggered or really upset when people were super rude to me online, right? Anytime you're as public as I am on Twitter, YouTube, etc., you're going to get hateful comments every single day. And it used to really upset me, right? Because you're not used to that in your normal daily life. And don't worry, MD, I'm going to tie this into, your situation with social anxiety. So I would get very upset with it. And one thing, like now, I'll have people even straight tell me, like, man, you deal with people being like mean, like very well compared to a lot of people online. And I'm not saying I'm perfect, but that is one thing even other large, people with social media things have said to me. They say, I don't really see you get triggered. I don't really see you retweeting and getting mad at people. And part of how I was able to deal with that, which I think will help with your social anxiety, MD, is if it's a social thing and you're worried about it, probably a huge part of that is you're worried how people feel about you, which makes sense, right? In your normal daily life, people you interact with, you want them to like you. But one thing I had to accept, which may help you, is at the end of the day, I cannot control how someone else feels about me, right? So if I'm on YouTube and I'm doing my thing and there's someone that just hates me for it, there's literally nothing I can do, right? I could be super sweet to them. I could be super nice to them. And maybe some people that will work on. And there's some people it's just not. They're just not going to like you for whatever reason. Same thing on Twitter. There's going to be people that are jerks to me whatever I do. It literally does not matter what I do. So if part of your social anxiety is, you're social, you're in front of people or you're interacting with people and, probably subconsciously, even if you're not aware of it, a lot of anxiety comes from the subconscious. It's things you're worried about and you're not even really aware of it. Probably part of that social anxiety is a slight fear, worry, what are people going to think about me? What are they going to judge about me? And MD, all you can do is be the best person you can. Focus on the things you can control, but at the end of the day, you cannot control how those people feel about you. Some of them are going to like you. Some of them aren't going to like you. Put yourself in the best position possible you can, and after that, it's out of your control. And that's a big part of anxiety across the board. A lot of anxiety actually comes from a good place, right? It's someone wanting to do their best. Like that's one thing I don't like. I've heard some people call people with anxiety a weakness, and I don't agree with that at all. I think it means it's someone that's very concerned with outcomes, right? Very concerned with outcomes, I would say. And focus on what you can control. If you're in a social situation, it's like you got to present something, focus on making your presentation as best as you can, but how someone will react to that presentation, it's out of your hands, right? So that's a lot of it. Focus on things you can control, set yourself up as best as possible, whatever your anxiety is about, and the outcome is a large part out of your control. But the best thing you can do is put yourself in the best position possible, whether that's social interactions, health outcomes, whatever, your work experience, anything like that. Focus on what you can control and try and let go of the things that you can't. Hopefully that helps. All right. Ghostface Killa is saying thank you for Benji for that channel membership. Absolutely. Or not Benji, it was Highlander. Absolutely awesome that Highlander gifted channel memberships. Sin saying howdy. What is up, Sin? Sin says maybe should have had a maybe answer there as well. I totally get it, but I just went for a straight yes or no. Just because I feel like we're all really in maybe. You know, like until this thing ships, we're all really in maybe. So if I put maybe, I feel like on these polls, like these specific ones, it's going to go to like 80 or 90% because this is vague enough we don't really know if it'll happen. So that's why I went with a simple yes or no. My polls are never scientific. It's just your gut feeling. And speaking of which, let's look at where we're at. I asked you should, right? The first question was, will Sea of Thieves go multi-platform? Second question is, should Sea of Thieves go multi-platform or Hi-Fi Rush? First poll, overwhelmingly, you thought the games will. It was 80-something%. On the should question, it definitely comes down, but still is very much, you guys think it's going to happen. 68% of you think that Sea of Thieves and Hi-Fi Rush should go multi-platform. And only 32% of you say no. Pretty interesting. That's basically 2/3, right? 2/3 of you think that they should go multi-plat. All right, I'm going to end that poll. And now we're going to pop up another one because I love the polls. Will Indiana Jones game launch in 2024? Again, just gut feeling. We have no confirmation, but there's rumblings from places like Insider Gaming, as well as it being part of this developer direct, that it is going to launch in 2024. But again, we don't know that for sure. It's not announced yet. So will Indiana Jones game launch in 2024? All right, where are we at with the channel members? Joseki, is Microsoft a publisher? Yes. Is Microsoft a platform holder? No. It'll be interesting to see. It'll be interesting to see. My hunch is they're still going to make Xbox consoles for quite a while. But I would say, again, if Sea of Thieves and Hi-Fi go multi-platform, I definitely think you're going to see a bigger multi-platform push across the board from Microsoft. Again, not saying everything goes multi-platform or anything like that, or they instantly stop selling Xboxes, but I don't think you would bring something like Sea of Thieves, you know, and Hi-Fi that quickly multi-platform if your plan long-term wasn't to do more. So, but we got to see. JCat, tough question. If Microsoft's goal really is to maximize revenue, then logically all their games should be multi-platform, in my opinion. You know, that's why I made the Halo tweet in response to Paul Tassi. And I think some people might get mistaken that, like, my Halo tweet or whatever was me saying, oh, Microsoft should do this. They should launch, you know, all their games multi. Like I said in my Twitter thread, I'm actually not entirely sure what their strategy should be in terms of that. If they should go more multi-platform or if they should focus on, I'm honestly not sure. And like I said in my tweet, the people making those decisions are a lot smarter and a lot higher paid than me. So I'm not even one of these people that's like, you know, I have a firm idea either way which way they should go. But the whole Halo tweet that I made to Paul Tassi is I was like, the arguments for putting Sea of Thieves on multi-platform would be identical to Halo Infinite. They would be. They would just, I mean, again, and we're talking strictly business reasons. We're not talking about perception or, you know, Halo traditionally. I'm talking about Halo Infinite specifically and Sea of Thieves, that comparison. It would be identical business reasons. It would be to get the most players on your live service game, which both of them are. It would be to get the maximum amount of players, the maximum amount of revenue from these games. Like it's the exact same cost analysis. You would literally be looking at the exact same thing for Sea of Thieves and Halo Infinite, right? And the argument, of course, would be, well, Halo is so traditionally tied to Xbox that, you know, that would be a huge blow. And I don't disagree with that, right? It wasn't me saying Halo absolutely should go multi-platform. It was just me saying, if you're going to do Sea of Thieves, I mean, how many consoles is Halo Infinite selling right now? You tell me. You think Halo Infinite right now, I'm not saying at launch, I'm saying right now, a few years after launch, how many people do you think are going out and specifically buying Xbox Series consoles at this point for Halo Infinite? It's not a lot. That's just the truth, right? It's not a lot at this point. Not at launch. Right now, it's not a lot. Do you go, hey, You know, Halo Infinite's been exclusive for a few years. We got the hardware impact we can out of it. Now do we look at putting that game on other platforms? Like, I'm not saying you do or don't, but Sea of Thieves really changed things. If it goes multi-platform. If. Big focus on if. Benji with a channel member question. Benji, games industry says Nintendo is working with new third-party devs on Nintendo IPs. This is in addition to the collaboration with the new Bandai Namco studios dedicated to Nintendo. Thoughts? Makes sense. I've told, listen, Nintendo is going to have an upward battle on their hands with Switch 2, and not an upward battle in that the console is not going to do well. The console is going to more than likely do tremendous, but they're going to have an upward battle in terms of they have to try and match or surpass Switch 1 in revenues and profits, because unfortunately that's just the way the market works, right? You always constantly have to have growth, and what's one way they can do that? Having more big games for their hardware, right? We've seen how much money the Zelda games have generated for them, how much Mario Odyssey's generated for them, how much Animal Crossing's generated for them, because the rumor is these third parties are, yes, working on Nintendo IP, not just signing random third-party exclusives, like specifically making Nintendo IP games. I mean, it makes sense, right? If you got to grow as much as possible and you already have an uphill battle because you're competing with, your incredible Switch 1 result. It's like the Yoshi P meme you see all the time, where it's like him smoking and it says suffering from success. Like, that's a bit of what Nintendo's about to head into, suffering from success, because Switch 1 was so successful that you have to find a way to get growth over that, or else investors get salty. That's just the way it works. One way you could potentially do that is having more big games that are Nintendo IPs that are going to be generating more revenue, more profit. So it makes sense. Sure. You want to get as many big games out the door as possible. So it definitely makes sense. I'm not surprised to see that. Nintendo only has so much internal development resources they can do. So if they want more games, right, if you look and you say, well, this is the amount of development resources we have and we need more games, the only way to do that is either acquisitions, which is what Microsoft's gone for, or you hire other studios to work on your games, which seems to be more Nintendo's strategy. Seems like Nintendo's not going to go aggressive on acquisitions, but they're going to try and go aggressive on partnerships. Drift23, hi, sorry. Oh, wow, you're not channel, but I just saw the Benji-Sales, so you're going to get it. Hi, sorry for late. Hope you answered my question. When do you think we will see the announcement of the next Nintendo system? When do you think it will be released? Also, new 3D Mario with it. My thoughts have been that we're going to get an announcement of the Switch 2 in the next, in the first 6 months of the year. That's a pretty big window, but I don't think it'll come any later than that. Potentially as soon as I think I wouldn't be shocked if it's as soon as March, right? That wouldn't surprise me at all. I think it for sure in the next 6 months. And when I think it'll be released, I've said before, I think it'd be really interesting if Nintendo went for summer. Nintendo already proved with Switch 1 they can launch their hardware wherever they want to. It doesn't need to be in the holidays, and they'll still instantly sell out. I think it'd be very interesting to do a summer launch. That way you get the big launch rush sales out of the way, and then it gives you, some months to build up for a big holiday push after that. I don't think they'll do that in the end, though. I think they'll probably launch the boring answer, September, October, November, somewhere in there. 3D Mario, I think they'll have Mario something, absolutely. Whether that's 3D Mario or Mario Kart, I don't know. I think it'll be one of those two, yes. I think you'll either have a 3D Mario or a Mario Kart launch with the console. One of those two. Or at least launch window, the first 3 months, right? You'll have either a 3D Mario or a Mario Kart. I'd be shocked if they don't. They'll have one of those two. Highlander with a 2 super chat. Thoughts on the layoff of 70% or 17% of Discord? It's crazy in general, man. Layoffs are just out of control. I know Discord's not specifically gaming, but it's tangentially related to gaming. You also saw huge layoffs at Twitch. I mean, it's 2020. I saw Matthew Ball wrote a tweet, and I believe 2022 set a new record for video game industry layoffs. I believe it was 2022. Then 2023 broke that record and set a new record for video game industry layoffs. And now early 2024. And again, I know Discord's not quite the same, but it is connected to gaming. Twitch is obviously much more connected to gaming than Discord, but still both connected. It's looking like 2024 might, yay, good news. Everyone looks like we're going to break the record again. 3 years in a row of breaking industry layoffs, right? That's really sad. But I just don't even have an answer for it anymore. It's bad, dude. It's bad. Bad. Thanks for the super chat. JCat, what if Microsoft retrospectively made all of their live service games multi-platform? Would that be a good approach? Then all single-player stuff could potentially stay on Xbox? It's a great question. Great question. Really good question. Let's run a poll. I like the polls. Let's run a poll on it, JCat, because it's a good question. All right, we're going to end this poll. Will Indiana Jones game launch in 2024? 76% of you said yes. 24% of you say no. I'm leaning towards yes as well, and I was not. I thought that was a definitive no until all this came out, because I didn't expect it to be shown in January, right? I thought Indiana Jones was definitely a 2025 game. But now, yeah, I'm kind of leaning with you guys. Let's run a poll on this, because this is a great question. JCat had a really, really good question here. If Microsoft starts going more multi-plat, should it be focused on live service or single player as well, right? We'll just say as well, not like focus, but as well. Oh, that's pretty long. I got to shorten it. I'm going to abbreviate Microsoft, okay? Because it's the only way I can make it fit. If Microsoft starts going more multi-platform, should it be focused on live service or single player as well? We'll say live service games primarily. We'll say mix of live service and single. And then we'll say no multi-platform. You don't want it, because some of you just don't, right? So we'll say if Microsoft starts going more multi-platform, should it be focused on live service or single player as well? Your options are live service games primarily. So you want them, if they're going to do this, to mostly just be the live service stuff. We'll say a mix. So you're open to all of it, right? Some live service. We're not going to go single player focused, because that's just not going to happen. So I'm not even going to include that as an option. But so live service games primarily, mix of live service and single, or no multi-platform. Good question, JCat. I don't know. I don't have a firm answer on that. I'm really divided how I feel about this. All right. I believe all channel members have gotten one question answered. Super chats have gotten all hit. So let's get to some free ones, man. Free questions, I apologize. You guys are not going to get much today. I'm going to still go for like 15 or 20 minutes, but there was so much in chat today. But let's see. Oh. All right, let's start rocking some free questions. Benji, does Activision deal with Ubisoft to ensure their games to stay multi-platform? Do you think if they have games that were in development before merger, they will continue to be multi-platform? So the Ubisoft deal specifically does not ensure that all Activision goes multi-platform, because those are just the streaming rights. So essentially it just guarantees that the streaming of these games can't be only through Xbox, right? Essentially, if you're going to, it can't be like xCloud exclusive, right? They can go to whatever streaming. That does not mean necessarily, though, that natively that they have to go everywhere. Technically speaking, you know, Microsoft could decide, and they're obviously not going to do this. We already know not, because Call of Duty. But I'm saying technically, you know, they could have decided to make essentially all of Activision Blizzard console and PC only in terms of the native version, and then cloud can go wherever. They're obviously not going to do that. There's going to be a lot of multi-platform stuff coming out of Activision Blizzard. They've just traditionally been multi-platform, and they're also very live service focused. That was one big difference between Activision Blizzard and Bethesda. When they bought Bethesda, Bethesda was primarily known for making single-player content. Activision Blizzard is primarily not known for making single-player content, and that includes Blizzard, right? That doesn't mean that they make no single-player content. Most Call of Duty games have a single-player component. A lot of Blizzard games you could play solo, but like Blizzard's known for Diablo, which is heavily multiplayer focused, Warcraft, which is heavily multiplayer, Starcraft, heavily multiplayer, Overwatch, heavily multiplayer, Activision, Call of Duty, heavily multiplayer. Like, it's live service. So you got to assume a lot of that's just going to continue to be multi-platform. The Ubisoft deal specifically, though, does not ensure it. It only legally ensures that streaming-wise, it can't go to exclusively through Microsoft channels. Yoda Soda. Benji, with the recent rumors about some Xbox Division games being released on other platforms, do you think they could make the next Crash and Spyro games multi-platform day one or 1 year later to maximize sales? I have shifted on my opinion on that if these rumors are true. If these rumors are true, I would expect Crash and Spyro to, yes, either be multi-platform day one or a staggered multi-platform launch. I would think so, yeah. Because now I'm starting to wonder, I used to think that Activision Blizzard would be making some exclusives for Microsoft. Now I don't know actually if they are. And again, I still think there's going to be Xbox exclusives. I'm specifically saying Activision Blizzard. I don't know. Maybe the plan really is for almost all Activision Blizzard to be multi-platform. But we'll have to see. I think a lot of this is up in the air. It's going to be hard to have a definitive take on most of this stuff, depending on how it shakes out. Again, if these games don't launch, then it changes the whole conversation, because there's no confirmation that these games are launching on other platforms. So like, as interesting as it is to talk about all these other scenarios and stuff, it could be that none of this matters. Like, these games might not be going multi-platform, and you know, that changes the dialogue a lot. So we'll see. It's hard to definitively go a certain stance until it's confirmed. Casual Gamer. Benji, how likely is it, in your opinion, that both Sea of Thieves and Hi-Fi Rush release on PlayStation? And then, do I think other Bethesda and Activision games, blah, blah, blah. How likely do I think it is? 50-50. I know that's like a lame answer, but I have no idea. It'd be different to me if Totillo and Grubb both stated that they heard they are coming, but neither said that. They both said they heard that it's being explored and potentially coming, but even Totillo in his report said, I was unable to verify like that's still the plan. So to me, it's 50-50. I absolutely believe the rumors, they've explored it, but whether it will actually happen, I don't know. I got to see. Deadly 8. Benji, do you think Xbox will release all of their licensed games on PlayStation, like Blade, Indiana Jones, and others that they have cooking unannounced? What about remasters of Marvel and Transformers games? I believe Grubb said in his last, I think it was like the last of the Nintendogs or something. I was watching one of Grubb's streams, and he said that the contract for Indiana Jones has been amended to be exclusive. So Indiana Jones, it sounds like, is not multi-platform. Sounds like Indiana Jones is exclusive. Now, could it go multi-plat later? Maybe. Blade has been a weird scenario from the beginning. I don't know what to think about Blade. We'll have to see. Again, so much of this is up in the air right now. My answers right now are very different if Sea of Thieves and Hi-Fi Rush were confirmed. If Microsoft would have already came out and flat out announced this, I would have much more definitive takes on some of this. But it's just a little hard because some of it's just not confirmed yet. So I want to be careful about getting too out ahead of ourselves. I think there was a super chat. There was a super chat. Thank you so much. A 10 from Prinny Dude. Thank you so much, Prinny. Xbox games going multi-plat could hurt if they don't sell well initially. People will just wait to buy them on their preferred platform. Why spend the money for ports if the initial interest wasn't there? That's why I think a lot is going to depend on Sea of Thieves. A lot. If this really goes multi-platform, I think Microsoft's going to look at that very, very closely. That's what I said earlier. If Sea of Thieves comes out, they really do this, it launches on PlayStation 5 and Switch, and it underperforms from what they're expecting, I think you could potentially see Microsoft pull back a lot on maybe some of their potential multi-platform plans. Obviously, stuff like Call of Duty and all that, and Overwatch, it's always going to be multi-platform. We're talking about the games we would expect to be exclusive. If Sea of Thieves comes out, bombs, they don't make that much money off of it, I would pull back a little bit, because you'd be like, okay, we're potentially sacrificing some of like how people look at our platform and not getting the sort of returns we need off of it. And again, maybe other games would find success, but that's a pretty big one. So you're already doing a pretty big gamble right out the gate. So I think a lot depends on that, Prinny. I think a lot. If Sea of Thieves comes out, it does absolute gangbusters, huge. They're like, doubling their revenue off of that game by it having now on Switch version and a PlayStation 5 version. I mean, that's pretty enticing. I could see Microsoft doing more games as a service games like that. But if it comes out and super underperforms, I could also see the exact flip side, them pulling back. So I think a lot depends on that, Prinny dude. I think a lot. I'm not saying it's the only make or break, but I think it's a pretty big test. Pretty big. It's like the perfect test to do, actually, when I think about it. Like, Sea of Thieves is the perfect test because it's not as flagship as Halo, right? If you would have led with Halo, then it's hard to pull back, right? Let's say, and I'm only mentioning Halo because it's another live service game. I'm not mentioning Halo because it's the most associated with Xbox. I'm saying if you're going to pick one of your big live service games, if you go Halo, it's hard to pull back from Halo. You've now done the big dog, right? Your biggest, most associated multiplayer brand game. But if you went too small, like some small service game, it's hard for me to think, like, let's say Grounded. Grounded's very successful, but it's also not been as big as Sea of Thieves, but very successful. But if you would have went with Grounded, you could be like, maybe we should have went, like, Sea of Thieves is that perfect middle ground where it was a huge game. It's had more than 30 million players lifetime, but it's not as associated as Halo. It's also not too small. So in some ways, it kind of makes sense if this really is the game they're going to test on. It's kind of the perfect one. So we'll see. I think a lot depends on how that does. All right. We're still going for like 10 or so minutes, 10 or 15 minutes, guys. I'll try and push it if I can because chat's been so big. We're still over 100. Again, 10 for sure, maybe 15. We'll see. Jason Benjamin, this year marks PlayStation's 30th anniversary. How do you think they will celebrate this milestone, releasing classic beloved titles as PS Classic catalog, remastering or remaking old games? Now, I think it's a great question. I don't know if they've really said much about the 30th anniversary, but we're only in January. I'm sure they'll do something, Jason. This is a very simple and maybe kind of lame answer, but I'd love to see some themed accessories. Some sort of DualSense themed for the 30th anniversary would be awesome. I would totally buy one. Again, that's smaller than like games and stuff, but that'd be a fun thing they could do that I'm sure would sell well. Some themed accessories for it, like a custom DualSense, things like that. We've seen them do that before. I believe they did that with the DualShock. They had like a headset and DualShock 4 for one of them, maybe the 25th anniversary. I think they even had a hardware bundle, didn't they? Where it looked like a PS1. So something like that would be really fun. I could see them adding more classic games, to like the classics catalog. Full-on remasters or remakes. I don't think that will be part of the strategy. I'm sure that they have remasters and remakes coming, but I don't know if those are going to be specifically tied to 30th anniversary stuff. It's probably going to be more of that other stuff we talked about. Batman Forever. Benji, do you think this year we will get two big PlayStation showcases, one in summer and one in fall, especially with the Pro releasing? Do you think PlayStation will still do two showcases in the coming years? They've been so... I don't want to be, like, mean to PlayStation because you guys know I'm very big fan of PlayStation, big fan of Xbox too. They've been so bad lately with showcases that it's hard for me to really like amp Sony up anymore in that regard. There was a time, and I'm sure they're gonna have an amazing one this year. I'd be shocked if they didn't. But I used to be much more bullish on like, oh, maybe they're gonna do multiple showcases. They've done so few showcases lately, and the ones they've had have not exactly been home runs. There's been some nice state of plays, but like I thought the actual showcase last year was pretty bad. With some highlights, but just not great, especially with how quiet they've been from their first party. So, listen, do I hope to see that? Of course. I want to see PlayStation absolutely rocking, rolling, tons of exclusives announced, big games, awesome stuff. I want to see that, but we'll see, man. Sony and PlayStation feel in a weird spot. Not in terms of business success. They don't feel in a weird spot in that regard. They feel in a weird spot with their first party. And I think most people, even PlayStation fans, would agree with that. But hopefully. Cameron Swear, hello Benji. I hope you're doing well. What would be your expectation if games like new/remakes of Resident Evil, Call of Duty, Final Fantasy, etc. drop day one on Switch 2 compared to PlayStation and Xbox? I expect Switch 2 to get very heavy third-party support, so I'd be unsurprised by any of this, if I'm just being real with you. The only one that would maybe surprise me of this is Final Fantasy, because Sony's just all in on paying Square Enix for Final Fantasy. So that to me is the most wild card, but I don't think Switch 2 looks anything like Switch 1 in third-party support. I'm just being frank. I expect the vast bulk of big third-party games to launch day one on Switch 2. I think it'll be way, way, way heavier third-party support than Switch 1. Zinfamous, hey Benji, I got a few questions. Something shown for the Gears franchise this year is a must, right? They're hinting at it. Yeah, I think you're going to see Gears this year. I don't think it's going to release, but they're going to show Gears this year, I think, finally. Gears 6, I guess, right? That's what we're on. It's been too long, I'd say, whether it's the first look at Gears 6 or a Gears collection. Also, would you agree that 2024 will probably be an extremely light year for big AAA releases from PlayStation, but at the same time, a packed one for game announcements for 25-26? Lastly, did Dana make you upset too with having to wait for 2 hours to announce Zhang vs. Yan? I'm seeing many upset in how 300 may turn out, especially compared to $299 the month before. Thoughts? Okay, we'll tackle these one at a time. Gears this year seems like a must, yes, to be shown. I actually think they're going to. There's been some hints from people at the Coalition on Twitter, kind of vaguely hinting that there might be something shown this year. That would make sense to me. They've been working on Gear 6 for a while. So yes, I feel very, like, confidence scale. My confidence scale is very high. You see Gear 6 this year, probably at the summer showcase. It ain't launching this year. They'll probably announce it for a 2025 release sometime next year. But Coalition hasn't released the game in a long time. You would think Gear 6 at this point is pretty deep into development. So yes, I would expect to see Gear 6 this year, at least shown. I don't know if it's going to be a giant gameplay showcase, but I think they'll at least announce the game. You'll see something Gear 6 related this year. It would make sense. I agree with your take on PlayStation 2024 and 2025-26. Sony has luckily made some strong third-party deals this year to get exclusive games that will help them. But in terms of first-party, it looks to be very, very light this year. But as we've talked about before, at some point, you know, these studios are going to start releasing games because there's too many PlayStation studios without games announced. You know, we've gone down the list. Like, you know, Guerrilla Games currently has no announced game. And again, some people are going to be like, we kind of know what we're talking officially announced games. Guerrilla Games has nothing announced. Santa Monica has nothing announced. Naughty Dog has nothing announced. Sucker Punch has nothing announced. Media Molecule has nothing announced. Blue Point has nothing announced. Like, it's almost all their studios. Almost all of their studios have nothing announced. So at some point, that stuff starts releasing. So yes, I would agree with that PlayStation take. This year, probably pretty light, but you would have to think that some of these really big games are going to start hitting 2025, 2026. You would think. Am I mad at Dana? No, because I actually didn't even realize he announced he was going to announce fights. And Zhang vs. Yan, I think, is a good fight. Like, I think Yan Xiaonan is really good. It's the first ever UFC fight with two Chinese fighters fighting for a title, which is a big deal. I also don't agree with people on the 299 versus 300 thing, because 300 is a very strong card right now. I only think the reason 300 is getting backlash is because it doesn't have that main event. Like, if you look at the fights that are potentially on that card, I mean, you're talking, you've got Rakic versus Yuri Prohaska. It's going to be a freaking banger more than likely. You've got Charles Oliveira versus Arman Sarukian. That's going to be an insane fight. You've got Zhang versus Yan, which I think is going to be a great fight. You've got Leon Edwards versus likely Bilal Muhammad. Probably a snooze fest of a fight, but you still get a big welterweight title fight in there. You got Bo Nickel on the card. You've got Aljamain Sterling making his featherweight debut against Calvin Kattar. That's probably going to be a sick fight. Like, it's stacked. Like, the idea that 300 is not a stacked card is just false. It is it's like a very stacked card. The problem for like the way 300 looks right now is because partially people in their mind have overhyped what 300 can realistically be. And then second of all, it's missing that big main event. If you have this card right now, which still has multiple fights that need to be announced, still needs another 4 or 5 fights to be a complete card. If you have that exact same card and then you get something really flashy, right? Something, I don't even know, the return of Brock Lesnar or something like Ronda Rousey versus Miesha Tate. Hardcore is going to be like, Ronda versus Miesha, who cares? Casuals care. Casuals care about Ronda Rousey versus Miesha Tate. That's who cares. Or Rousey versus Holm too. Casuals care about that fight, right? That's the whole thing with Brock Lesnar. Casuals care about that fight. 300's missing the big, flashy main event. But outside of that, the card's ridiculously stacked. In fact, the idea that 299's massively more stacked than 300, I think is false. 299 looks amazing. It doesn't look crazy more amazing than 300 right now. They both look insane. It just looks like back-to-back insane cards. But we'll see. 300 it is missing its main event. I agree with that. All right, where we at? All right, on my poll that I've been running, chat's not over yet, but I'm looking at the poll. If Microsoft starts going more multi-platform, should it be focused on live service or single player as well? Right now, the poll results, 42% of you say live service games primarily. 36% of you say a mix of live service and single player games, and 21% of you say no multi-platform. So the leader right now with you guys is live service games mostly. And I actually kind of agree with that. I think I'm probably with you guys on saying, at least for now, they should focus on the live service stuff. If they're going to do this, keep the single player stuff exclusive mostly, but we'll see. Downward incline. Didn't Phil say a while ago that they don't care where we play their games? Yes, the problem is Phil has also made comments about like how exclusives are important. So it's like, and again, I like Phil. It's just, I do think Xbox has had a bit of mixed messaging. And I think they really need to decide exactly where they're going. And who knows, maybe internally they do know exactly where they're going. But I think they need to be a little more crystal clear with their audience about what's happening. Prenny, he compared Hi-Fi Rush to GTA 5, which was just such a skewed comparison. I don't know who you're talking about. I don't think you're talking about me. I have never made that comparison. I definitely would never compare Hi-Fi to GTA. I'm assuming you're not referring to me, because that is a crazy comparison. I don't know who made that, but it was definitely not me. Cal-Links, I think they shouldn't do this for most games. If they did it sparingly, I think it could be good for some games like Hi-Fi on Switch. Could be big and then make Hi-Fi 2 exclusive. Sea of Thieves would also do well on multiple platforms, bring in a ton of new players, so I think that can make a lot of sense. At the end of the day, Cal-Links, assuming this is real, I think it's probably going to be a continuation of Microsoft's case-by-case basis, which might be the smartest thing for business. I think they're going to really confuse their Xbox faithful, let's call them, But yes, I think it'll probably be like what you're saying, case by case basis, which is the wording they've used in the past. But we'll see. During Gray, people forget the 90s. It used to be Mac versus PC. It was worse than the console war nonsense. Nowadays, Microsoft literally has its software on Apple and vice versa. It doesn't matter. Yeah. Good point. Good point. Federico Galvan, I could see Hi-Fi Rush at a $30 to $40 price tag on Switch being really successful. So could I. Selling like, millions and millions of copies? No, but successful? Sure. I think it would do really well on that console specifically. Killinks, the main issue they will run into is making Xbox owners feel undervalued. That might not matter in the long run if consoles are going away, but in the short term it could hurt. Yeah, it's a good observation. I think Microsoft does envision a future where most games are everywhere. I mean, they've essentially communicated that. I think that they envision at some point it's going to be like the vast majority of games are just all over the place, and they're basically setting themselves up for that now. And yeah, the question is, could it have some short-term, hurt? The next 10 years are going to be super interesting, guys, to see how gaming shakes out. It's going to be very interesting. Especially with PC. I was talking about this in my private Discord. I've never been one of those people that's on the consoles are dying bandwagon, and I'm still not on the consoles are dying bandwagon. I think consoles are going to be around for a very long time. I do think PC is going to cannibalize consoles, not just Xbox, PlayStation as well, more and more and more with Gen Z. I work retail. A lot of Gen Z plays PC, and they grew up watching their streamers play PC and not console. And they come in and they buy Steam cards, and they buy Fortnite V-Bucks that they play on PC. Like a lot. Like most of my Xbox and PlayStation people I sell to are millennials, and the vast bulk of PC people coming in to buy PC stuff are Gen Z. And I think a big part of that is I know it sounds weird, but they literally have watched streamers their entire time growing up, and almost all the streamers play on PC. Almost none of them are playing console games. There are some big streamers that play console. The vast majority are playing games on PC. I think PC is going to really start to dent into the console market in the next 10 years. Again, not kill consoles, but I think it's going to start to make a real big dent with Gen Z, yeah. During Gray, Microsoft just passed Apple as the most valuable company in the world. I'm sure they're crushed by the news. People are upset. Yeah, Microsoft's, they're fine. They're plenty fine, regardless of what happens. Just a couple more and I have to go, so I got to get ready for work. Dan, I think Xbox is going to treat Game Pass and its content like Disney Plus, HBO, and others, meaning content can be bought on other competing platforms later on outside the huge games probably. That's an interesting idea. Interesting. So, kind of like how Disney treats their streaming service and PVOD. Dan, I didn't look at it specifically like that, but that analysis kind of makes sense. That comparison, Dan, that's actually pretty good. We'll have to see if that's how they go, but it could be, hey, you could pay for our content outside of, our Game Pass, our console thing like that. Like we have some games you can pay for outside of it, just like you don't have to have Disney Plus to watch, the next Disney movie that comes out at home on streaming, right? You can pay to buy that on PVOD and rent it or buy it either way, usually before Disney Plus now. Used to be like Disney Plus would hit like the same time as PVOD, and then Disney discovered, wait a second, we can make more money if we do the digital release first, then stagger the streaming launch after that. Interesting. You could kind of see it that way, like, hey, we'll let you buy our content outside of Game Pass, but then the perk to subbing for Game Pass is you don't have to buy this stuff. Pretty interesting. Samuel Tolbert, what's up, Samuel? Great friend of mine. Check out his work all over the place. Great journalist. Samuel's the man. Hey, Benji, surprising to see Indiana Jones in the Xbox Developer Direct. How excited are you, and thoughts on Indiana Jones possibly being 2024? Dude, I was very surprised to see this. Like I said earlier, I thought Indiana Jones was definitely a 2025 game, just considering we'd never seen anything on it, and they already had multiple games hitting this year from Xbox. Big surprise, my hype for it until recently has been fairly low, because I'm not a giant Indiana Jones fan. I'm not like an Indiana Jones hater, but I wouldn't consider myself a big fan. But I do love Machine Games. I thought both their Wolfenstein games were fantastic. But I'll tell you what, I'm getting more excited now knowing it's close, right? It's one of those things where it's like, oh, wait, now that it's like kind of here, now I'm excited to play this. Like when it was just some nebulous future thing, I was like, whatever, I'll play it when it comes out. It's Machine Games, I'll play it. But now knowing how close it potentially is, I would say my excitement has definitely ramped up, knowing I'll potentially be playing this very soon. We'll have to see what it looks like. I'm curious if it's third person or first person. That'll be our last poll. Last poll, guys. Will Indiana Jones be first person or third person? We don't actually know. Machine Games makes traditionally FPS shooters, but kind of could see them going for third person on this. So we'll say your options are first person, third person, or both options, right? Almost like a Skyrim or something. You can do first or third. All right, last few and I gotta go. Last few, I'm going to go for just a couple minutes. Thanks for a great chat today. Big turnout. Thank you, everybody. I appreciate it. Let's scroll low to the chat for some people that came in late so they could get an opportunity. Who has not gotten? I'm trying to look for people that haven't gotten a question yet. Complicated Sam, is Starfield going to other platforms as well? As of now, there is no rumors from reliable sources about Starfield going multi-platform. So as of now, I would assume no, but we'll have to see. But at least as of now, I believe, yeah, not really. Danger Man, Gen Z being PC is wild. Jensen Huang is a damn good salesman. I'm pretty sure I said his last name wrong. Yeah, Gen Z loves PC, man. I think it's mostly because streamers. I really think it's mostly because streamers. Think about it. If you're sitting there watching a streamer all the time, and again, it's not that there's not some big streamers that play on console, but like 90% of that Twitch stuff is all PC. If you're growing up just watching all the people you watch playing PC, you're going to be more... Yeah, I mean, that's why marketing exists, right? This is like non-paid for marketing, right? Like it's, what's the word I'm looking for? That's basically, what's the wording? I can't think of the word. I'm sure one of you will say it in chat, but it's like organic. It's almost like organic marketing. Like no one's paying for the PC to be there, but like when you're just being exposed to that, growing up, people play games on PC. Like when I was growing up, right? I'm an old head in a lot of ways. When I was growing up, like no one I knew PC gamed. Like literally no one. I had one friend that had like, it wasn't even a gaming PC. It was just a PC that could run like some cheap games. But like everyone I knew played video games on consoles. Like no kids played on PC. And we weren't watching people play PC. Gen Z, it's an entirely different thing. Anytime they're tuned into a streamer, 90% of the time they're playing on PC, which is organic marketing. It's going to make you be like, oh, I want a gaming PC. So yeah, I mean, Gen Z seems to be very heavy on PC in my opinion. Rousey sucks though. Yeah, but that's not what it's about. It's about selling pay-per-views. It's about selling pay-per-views. And Rousey will sell a lot more pay-per-views than Leon Edwards. That's just the truth. It ain't even close. You put Ronda on that card, it goes over 1 million. You headline it with, you know, Leon versus Bilal. Might still do 1 million because it's the number 300, but trust me, that pay-per-view sells better with Ronda on the top of it than Leon. Ain't a doubt about it. And I love Leon. I think Leon's a super skilled, awesome dude. But Leon Edwards and Bilal Muhammad cannot sell a fight to save their lives. They can't do it. That's why this fight's going on 300, because UFC knows that as well. They're like, dear Lord, if we put Leon and Bilal on their own pay-per-view, we're going to sell like 100K. And that's like it, because neither one of these guys know how to talk. And oftentimes are both in boring fights. Danger Man, big question. If Microsoft goes heavy multiplat, will Sony? I won't be surprised if Elder Scrolls 6 is on PlayStation and then switch to successor eventually. I think that the day may come where you start to see Sony go multi-platform as well at some point, but they will be a holdout, right? You're already seeing them experiment with that in PC at staggered release. But again, this would be like, they're nowhere close to Microsoft. Trust me. They're still very much a console company. The last holdout will be Nintendo, right? It'll go in that order. If multi-platform starts to become the thing, it'll be Microsoft and Xbox leading the way, Sony at some nebulous future point after that. Nintendo will be the absolute last holdout. They'll hold out as long as possible against it, but theoretically, could PlayStation one day? Yeah, but I wouldn't expect that anytime soon. Probably not even until after the PS6, but I could be wrong. Robert Museo. Ciao from Italy, Benji. Yo, what's up? I have family from Sicily, right? That's like what I am more than anything. I'm more Italian than anything. So ciao to you in Italy. I've never been to Italy, but yeah, my mom's Italian. My grandparents are Italian. That's where they came from, over in Sicily. I have a bunch of family, distant relatives, but I have family that still lives over there. My dream is to go to Italy one day. So that's what I am more than anything else. Of course, I'm a mix like a lot of Americans are. I'm a big mix of stuff, but I'm Italian more than anything. Don't know if I already asked, do you expect a surprise announcement at the Xbox Direct? Probably, yes. Probably. Just like Hi-Fi was last year. I don't think it will be a stealth launch like Hi-Fi was. Like Hi-Fi was a double surprise. First of all, the game was not teased to be there before the Direct. And then it was there, and not only was it there, it got stealth dropped. I don't think we're going to get a stealth drop, Roberto, but I do think that there will be a fifth game there that is not being teased, because they did it last time. Why not do it again? So you wouldn't give away a new announcement before the Direct, right? Because Indiana Jones we knew existed, right? All the games they announced beforehand were things we knew. So if you want to do a surprise, you wouldn't flash that right on the Direct announcement. You would keep that hidden. So I'm going to guess they do. I'm going to guess they have one. Ali, any new info on BioShock? All I've heard is that game has been in absolute development hell. That's all I've heard. Not really much details. All I've heard is that the BioShock game that's coming from Take-Two has been in utter development hell for years. Now, maybe that's been fixed. I don't know. That's literally the only thing I've ever heard, is that game has been in utter development hell. I believe I've heard also it's been rebooted like 3 times. But I don't know. Okay, I gotta go. Todd Brown, love what you do. Keep it up. Thank you, Todd. Thank you for the kind words. Arrowroot, great stream, Benji. Thank you. Well, thank you, Arrowroot. What is up? Oh, we got a super chat we got to get to before we bounce. Tunsi K, $5.99. If Microsoft is going multi-plat and still having Game Pass, their competitor becomes EA Play, etc. I cannot believe they're buying all this pubs to be itself a pub. It's going to be interesting to see, Tansi. It's going to be very interesting. First of all, thank you for the super chat. Second of all, again, I'm being a little cautious on the full-on multi-platform stuff because none of this is confirmed yet, right? Let's see what happens. It could be we've all had all these discussions and all of these hot takes. And Tansi, I'm clearly not saying yours is a hot take. I'm saying you're seeing people melt down on Twitter. You're seeing like all sorts of different stuff, right? You're seeing some people go, every Xbox game's now going to go to PlayStation. Then you're seeing the reverse. I'm going to sell my Xbox. I hate Xbox. Or, nothing's going to... Listen, it could be we all have all of these hot takes, all of this drama, and then these games don't even come to other platforms. Microsoft themselves has not confirmed any of this. So I'm being a little careful on how I answer some of this stuff. Here's what I would say, though. If they start doing more of this multi-platform, I think they're just setting themselves up in the future to be the biggest video game maker in the world, potentially. Notice what I said there. Not the biggest console seller. I think it would be Microsoft positioning themselves. Their games are everywhere. They have Activision. They have all of these giant Call of Duty games. They have all these Bethesda games. They have all these games. And if they're putting them everywhere, I mean, imagine what the revenue off that would be, right? Xbox is setting all-time record revenue numbers right now. And that's with still having, a lot of exclusives, right? Not a lot in terms of I know they've had some off years where they weren't releasing much, but the majority of their output is still exclusive compared to multi-platform. If that were to flip, and we saw the majority be multi-platform, and they stopped caring about, again, there's some trade-offs. That's why I said in my tweet, I think there's no free lunch, right? If they go more multi-platform, I think it does impact their hardware business. And the question is, which has more upside than downside? That's an analysis that Microsoft and the people they pay are going to have to make. But I think, all these acquisitions, if they want to eventually go more third-party, they're just setting themselves up to be the biggest game maker on the planet. But we'll see. Not the best console seller on the planet. The biggest game publisher, maker, exactly, whatever. Beef Hammer, worried about Suicide Squad sales? Here's the funny thing. Suicide Squad's been the #1 pre-order game on PlayStation Network for weeks. I was talking about this in my Discord. I even took a picture of it. It's been outselling Tekken. It's been outselling everything, which is pretty funny. Because you can sort pre-orders by best selling. And I have no idea if you can see this on camera, but right now the $100 version of Suicide Squad is the #1 selling pre-order. It's the #1 selling pre-order on PlayStation, right? It's above Tekken, it's above Final Fantasy Rebirth, it's above Like a Dragon Infinite Wealth, it's above The Last of Us Part 2. Pretty interesting. My hunch, Beef Hammer, my hunch about what's happening is it's being completely carried by brand recognition right now. And if the game comes out and is bad, it probably has no legs, right? But we'll have to see. I mean, people forget that Avengers at launch from Square Enix was huge. It was the second biggest launch in the history of superheroes in the US. People forget that. Avengers is always painted as this huge failure, and that's because long-term it was a huge failure. People forget out of the gate, it sold better than Batman Arkham Knight. It did. It was the second biggest superhero launch ever. The only one that was bigger was Spider-Man 2018. So you're talking about had the second biggest launch in the history of the superhero genre, bigger than any of the Batman Arkham games, but then it had zero legs, right? So I have a hunch that Suicide Squad might be one of these things that, just like Avengers, brand recognition is going to carry it to maybe a very big first week or something like that. But if the game itself is actually bad, it might just have tremendously bad legs. But the only sales data point that's public that I can see right now is PlayStation Network pre-orders, and it's actually #1, ahead of Tekken, ahead of Final Fantasy, ahead of Like a Dragon, everything, which is an interesting thing to see. All right, I have to go. I wish I could answer more questions because the turnout today was tremendous. There were so many super chats, gifted memberships from Highlander, all sorts of good stuff. I'm going to read the results of the poll, and then I'm going to bounce just because I have to go to work. So I'm so sorry, guys. I asked you, will Indiana Jones be first person or third person? Leader was 39% of you at third person. Second was at 37%, both options. You think it'll offer first or third person options, and then 24% of you say first person only. Pretty interesting considering Machine Games is known for first person shooters, that the majority of you think third person. But I kind of feel like for Indiana Jones, part of the draw would be seeing Indy, so I kind of agree with you guys. Again, normally, if this was any other IP, I would just assume first person with Machine Games. But the fact it's Indiana Jones, part of the draw is seeing him. So I'm going to guess third person, but I don't know. All right, guys, I got to go. Marvel Fanatic, can you please answer my question before you go? Marvel, since you politely asked right at the end, I will get it. Do you think other PlayStation studios will make Marvel games? You haven't answered my question. No, I don't. My answer to that is no, simply because of seeing how heavy Insomniac's slate is. If the leaks would not have happened and all we had confirmed was just like a Wolverine game and then, whatever their Spider-Man stuff is, I would say, yeah, maybe other PlayStation studios will. But the fact that we know that Insomniac is now primarily a Marvel studio, and that is the truth, that they don't have any... It's not that they have nothing but Marvel in the pipeline. We're also aware of at least one other big game that's coming. It leaked another Ratchet game. But the truth is, you saw their roadmap. They're more Marvel than anything. So the fact Insomniac is essentially a Marvel-focused studio now, no. I think any partnerships with PlayStation and Marvel are going to be funneled through Insomniac. Could be wrong, but that's my guess. All right, everyone, I got to go. Thank you for a great chat. Thank you for a great turnout. Thank you for the super chats, the channel memberships, all of the good stuff. Thanks for all of the support always here on YouTube and Twitter or X or whatever you want to call it. Like the video if you haven't already. We do one of these chats every single week. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Get me over 5,000 subs. I've been at 4,000 subs for like a year and a half or 2 years or something crazy. I've been stuck at 4K forever. Get me over 5,000. Follow me on Twitter or X if you haven't already. That's where basically everyone knows me from, and that's where I'm the most active. As always, stay safe. Play some games. We have an exciting week next week with the Xbox Developer Direct, and I'm sure some other big stuff. So have a good one, guys. Love you all. Thank you for all the support. You are all the best. Have a good one. Bye, 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 bye.